Welcome to This Week in Hearing for another episode, a show where we discuss all types of innovation and emerging technology pertaining to the worlds of hearing aids, hearables, hearing health, pretty much anything that falls into this giant spectrum that is the world of hearing. With me today, I have Giles Tongue and Andy Bellavia. We're going to be discussing some really exciting new innovation stemming from these two companies. So I will now kick it over to them, let them introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do. We'll start with you, Andy.
Thanks for having me on again, Dave. It's always a pleasure. Andy Bellavia, Director of Market Development for Knowles Hearing Health Tech Group. And I'm responsible for everything which is not a regulated hearing aid, actually, which is in-ear monitors for professional musicians, radio communications earpieces, and true wireless hearable devices, which is, of course, what we're going to talk about today.
Perfect. And Giles.
Hi, I'm Giles, CEO of Chatable. We're a leading AI startup. We're based in London, but we're funded by Mark Cuban, and we started in about 2017 on this exciting journey. And yeah, thanks very much for having me on today.
Perfect. Well, the reason I wanted to bring these two on, it was just announced a few days ago that Knowles has introduced their new AISonic audio processor chip. And included in this chip is some integration with Chatable's technology. So before I, kind of put the cart before the horse and get to what exactly this integration entails, I wanted to start with you, Andy, to really kind of understand, broadly speaking, the broad strokes of this chip and some of the innovation that will ultimately kind of allow this to usher in.
Sure, be glad to. And just a minor correction, the chip itself has been around for a little bit. We, for example, recently released a kit that enables white goods and appliance makers to add voice to their existing device. But what's new is that we've now integrated the chip into a true wireless development kit. And the reason we did that is because the hearables market is really moving forward on a lot of different fronts. And we've seen in all the different surveys how sound quality is the number one demand from people wearing hearable devices. And that comes with longer and longer wear. People are listening and consuming audio. They want good sound quality. So we enable the highest possible sound quality there. People want long wear and comfort. They want ANC. And with long wear comes, a voice assistant access. People are using their voice assistant more and more. So we've enabled local wake words and multiple wake words within the device. And so all of these things go into the kit so people can develop true wirelesses for all the use cases that people are demanding. And one of those is hearing enhancement, conversational assistance. We've seen in the recent surveys anywhere from 30 to 50% of people asking for it. And it's because apart from hearing impairment, even people with normal hearing have a hard time understanding in difficult situations like loud restaurants and so on. I mean, how often do you see people yelling across a table at each other? And these are people with no hearing loss at all. I mean, Brent Edwards, recall in the earlier discussion, Brent Edwards of the NAL, he identified just in the United States, 25 million people who don't measure as having hearing loss, but still have trouble hearing in loud situations. And so one of the goals of this kit was to enable conversation assistance for everybody. And that's really the goal of the partnership with Chatable. Now, as for the chip itself, it's actually designed especially for audio applications. It has two different processors in it. One of them is very, very low power, and this is where your wake words happen. So you can have hands-free voice assistant access and even two voice assistants. So I could, for example, ask for Google, or I could ask for my music voice assistant, or whatever I want to do. So multiple voice words, that sort of thing. The other processors, very high speed, high compute for audio application. And this really, when you talk about advanced features of the kit, this is where the magic happens. It is designed especially to run very compute intensive applications like Chattables. And we're very, very thrilled to have this partnership going, because now for the first time, you can take this sort of AI-based conversational assistance and put it in the ear. So at this point, Giles, why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit more how that actually works?
Thanks, Andy. A great intro, and you've used some of my lines already, which is convenient actually, which segues me in. So if we start with transparency mode today, so AirPods, earbuds, very popular at the moment, expected to sell something like 2 billion units over the next 4 years. And people are very comfortable with using their earbuds, and they don't seem to want to take them out as much as you might imagine. So wearing them to listen to music, for phone calls, etc., etc. And people are used to all day use. But the trouble with the transparency mode at the moment is as much as you want to be able to sit down in your favorite coffee shop and have a conversation with your friend as they come in and just press transparency mode, what that's doing is letting in all the noise. So you're kind of back to where you started with your peaceful world that you were sitting in and enjoying yourself is now being interrupted by all the noise that's coming through with the conversation. So it's worth dwelling on conversation for a second, because what we're getting from conversation is not just voice, it's information. So when you're talking to someone, you're learning about their age, their sex, the intent of what they're talking about. And we're getting a lot of information that's coming through that conversation. And as the noise is coming in, we lose that information. So in a silent situation, you might be able to hear a mosquito around you. As somebody in the next room answers a phone call or the TV goes on, you can't hear that mosquito anymore. And the same is true for conversation. All of those little nuances that you were picking up, you start to lose as the noise increases. So that's what's happening with transparency mode, is you want to use it for the conversation, but ultimately you're getting all this noise coming in. And that's ultimately why we hear about Future Source and the data you mentioned earlier on about why conversation enhancement is so in demand. So what we're able to do with our tech is to enhance that transparency mode and take it to a level where that conversation is actually enhanced. So if we want to go into it in a little bit of detail now, then we can look at AI and why it's such a good fit for solving this problem, and the two challenges that we have to overcome as we're going into it. The first, of course, is latency. This is a challenge for any DSP, but particularly for AI. Adding AI will add latency. So a bit like on a Zoom call, if you have a lot of latency, it's somewhat uncomfortable. If you add that kind of latency into an in-person conversation, it's egregious and unusable. So you don't want any latency. And the second thing you want to do is to have this actually on chip in your device. And that removes all of the inconveniences that might occur from secondary devices, or it indeed adds latency itself. So typical approaches to AI are adding latency and adding a somewhat inconvenient factor because they need to run on third-party devices. And what we've been working on to overcome is to remove that latency completely and also be able to run on device. But the missing ingredient to this point was the chip. And that's why we were so excited earlier in this year when we started to have some private conversations with Knowles about the AISonic chip and to look at how we could begin to build a new AI that would work on this chip with the resources that were available. So that was a bit of a monologue, sorry, but that brings us up to where we are now with this new Chatable AI that's running on the Knowles chip.
Yeah, I think this is so exciting for a number of reasons. First of all, I've known both of you for a little while now, and I just find this so fascinating that it's sort of like your two respective companies that really represent what is this kind of convergence here of technologies. And so, we've had Giles with Chatable has existed, but it's never really had a chip that's compatible to run their AI processing, right? And so then you have this Knowles AISonic audio processor chip that's the perfect companion for this type of processing capabilities. It can run, like Andy said, kind of these intensive computes. And so, what does this all translate into? Well, I think what's so exciting is this is just a DSP chip that can fit onto virtually any system on a chip out there, right? And so what we're going to see, and this is what I think has been kind of the recurring theme, is the underlying technology. What's actually going on under the hood of a lot of these different devices is this dramatic improvement in all kinds of the components that make up the devices. And so ultimately, what we're kind of looking at right now is the horizon where we're going to have the next generation of hearing aids and hearables and true wireless headphones and all these different things. The actual guts of the device are getting so much better. And what it means is that the next $100 pair of Skull Candy headphones or whatever kind of headphones are out there, or your next generation hearing aids, they're going to have all kinds of improved capabilities from a fundamental standpoint that's derived from the innovation happening inside of the devices. And this is, I think, is such a good representation of kind of where we are today in this state of technology for these devices is, the smaller that we go and the more granular that we're able to go because of, Moore's law and just the nature of devices getting smaller and more efficient and more powerful. The end result is that all kinds of devices that are going to be hitting the market here soon are going to have really exciting features baked into them kind of at the core. And I think that's cause for a lot of optimism. What are your thoughts there, Andy?
Yeah, I agree. How many years have we been talking about what it'll take to make an all-day hearable device that people will really wear? And you kind of just tick through the different things that are in this kit as representative of what's possible for any true wireless company to develop around now. I mean, begin with the speakers. We've got a hybrid driver in there, which is a dynamic speaker, ordinary speaker as a woofer for the bass, and then we have a balanced armature tweeter. This is becoming all the rage in high performance hearables now. It goes with the HD audio streaming. People want better sound quality. And actually just today, it's the 6th as we record this, you can go read what Mark Sparrow of Forbes wrote about hybrid drivers and how good they sound. He just published it this morning. And so you've got the sound quality. If the sound quality is poor, people won't wear it for all day. You have ANC. We actually chose Sony's ANC chip because they're one of the world's finest. And people want ANC for all day wear because they go on the train, they're in a loud setting. They still want to listen without blowing out their eardrums. Good quality ANC. We got microphones. We got a vibration sensor, which, gives you voice security so that your neighbor can't trigger things. It has to be your own voice. And of course, we've got the audio processor chip, which enables all kinds of advanced function. For example, we're using a Lango for the outgoing voice so that you get clear voice for your voice assistant or calls or whatnot on the outgoing side. And of course, Chatable on the incoming side so that you have essentially the best possible incoming sound quality under any circumstances. You can understand people no matter what environment you're in. And so all the pieces have now come together to give good, comfortable, good sounding, advanced features. It's almost like having your own ears, but better. And with, your butler walking behind you, telling you everything you want to know, right? Hey, Jeeves, how do I get to this restaurant, right? And Jeeves answers you as naturally as possible. So now you really have a device. We've really come after all this time, Dave, to having a device that people actually can wear all day long and get a tremendous amount of value from it.
Really, really well said. Giles, I'm curious to, kind of come back around to the Chatable piece. Andy, that was such a good summary of everything that's going on. And you mentioned, okay, so there's this facet of it that is the audio that comes in. I want to give you an opportunity here because it's so interesting what you're all doing. Can you really share what exactly it is that Chatable's doing without giving away any of the secret sauce, but kind of in plain English, what's going on and what that end result is for the consumer?
Yeah, sure. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the information you're really after, which is the person speaking to you, is coming to you without any kind of interference hitting it. So there could be other noises in the room. There could be, if it's a coffee shop situation or even at home with TV or people next to you or whatever. All of these things are running some kind of interfering effect on what you're trying to listen to, the other person's speech. So what we do with our AI is take that sound that's coming in and we're going to enhance that speech. So you're finding the conversation is just better. If you imagine you're in a coffee shop or something and that person is suddenly a meter closer to you, that's the kind of effect that we're creating here. We're really able to create a more vivid conversational experience for you so that, as I say, that information is preserved so that the effect is one of just general enhancement. Andy said, it's just better. That's what we think people will be saying when they're using this. So you switch from that transparency mode where it's just, everything noise and all the rest of it. You then switch on our AI Transparency Plus feature, as we're calling it. And the conversation just becomes better, more vivid, brighter. Take off your AirPods or your earbuds or whatever you're wearing and you think, oh, I wish I had that back on. So that's the kind of feature that we're delivering here. It's really about conversation enhancement is absolutely the right phrase for it. It's a more vivid, a more brighter experience, which we think everyone will enjoy. It doesn't have to be a coffee shop. It could be at home, could be at the skate rink, could be wherever you are. This is a feature for everyone that should be as simple as just touching a button and switching it on. And that's what's being enabled by this combination of really efficient AI with these new supercharged chips that are available to process all of these complex calculations.
Yeah, I want to add to that because I've taken a lot of hearable devices out for a spin, and some of them have transparency mode, but it's really unnatural. It may be good for telling if a car's coming up behind you when you're running, but when you try to have conversations with them, you can't tell what direction it's coming from. It doesn't sound natural. All the noise comes in with it. That's a real barrier to all-day hearables where, the Chatable system, which gives you not only completely natural, but enhanced transparency, really breaks down one of the main barriers to wearing hearables all day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, it comes back to this whole theme of, I'm going to put my hearing health hat on here. And Andy, we've kind of had this discussion before, but I continue to believe that, one of the most significant ways in which we can improve adoption of hearing solutions, and that should not just be limited to hearing aids. I'm speaking more to this concept of doing anything to treat and alleviate your hearing loss, and knowing how pervasive hearing loss is and how specific it is to each individual, right? And so I think that having this ability, like Giles said, where you turn a button on, I think about sort of that scenario, broadly speaking, at scale, and having lots and lots of people being able to experience that sounds that they haven't really heard in years for the first time, whether it's just in a conversation, the clarity of a conversation, right? How often is it where people might, just over the course of time, it degrades to the point where it's, you kind of just, your brain becomes acclimated to the fuzziness that's associated with your type of hearing in a conversation, so restoring clarity there, being able to hear the birds chirp again, right? Like being able to give people this restoration in a sense through technology of their sense. And I think that the big thing that does is it makes people aware of what they've lost. And I think that's probably one of the most significant ways that we can help to drive overall adoption for this, because it gives them a taste of this. When you start to have this massive proliferation of consumer devices that people are buying for streaming, right? They're not really buying them for these hearing augmentation purposes. Some will be, but by and large, many of the people that I'm kind of describing here, I think are going to be exposed post-purchase to this. And I think that those are the ones that really represent the people that have historically been cited as this 7-year gap of taking action on your hearing loss. Now we're looking at a scenario very, very soon where people, I think, will be exposed and they'll get a taste of this. And whether they decide that that's enough for them, just their pair of true wireless headphones that have this conversational enhancement boost, or they want to go and they want to adopt something a little bit more significant than that. I just think that the name of the game is exposure. And this is going to create so much more exposure to folks that may have sort of slowly lost their hearing over the course of time.
Yeah, Dave, you make a lot of really excellent points there. I think from the beginning of people who just have a hard time hearing in loud environments and don't have hearing loss at all, which is most of us. So even apart from hearing loss, I think this is just a wonderful enhancement for all-day hearables. But your point is quite right. People are getting at the front end of hearing loss, and they only start to notice it in loud restaurants and so on, suddenly realize how much better it can be. And that's already an accessibility issue, because you're putting a consumer priced device in someone's ears that allows them to participate in daily life. And that's really important. And of course, as you get more severe in hearing loss, you can see why this is valuable even in next generation hearing aids. If you're doing true AI noise extraction, as well as the amplification that more severely hearing impaired people need, that's really wonderful, because everybody will tell you, even with modern hearing aids, it's probably the use case that they satisfy the least. There are things they are doing to improve it. And like in my own case, I notice a vast improvement, but it's far from perfect. And you can see a real value all the way up and down the hearing health or hearing loss spectrum, the value of such an approach as Chatable's taking.
Right. I couldn't agree more there. And I think that, again, it's just, it provides more of a footprint, right, for people to maybe be exposed to this kind of functionality. But I think, again, kind of like bringing it home here, I think what's exciting, again, is this idea that, when you really kind of look, you take the magnifying glass out basically, and you look at what's going on with these systems on a chip. It wasn't even that long ago where that whole premise didn't exist, where you weren't able to input an entire system on a single chip. And when we're talking about little tiny devices, that you wear inside your ears. Size is a big deal. And I think that these kinds of things, when you really start to understand what's happening, at the most granular level of these devices, it gives you a lot of optimism around what comes next, right? Like, here we are in 2021, and I'm curious to just get your guys' overall thoughts about what else we can kind of start to layer onto this. We don't have to go into specifics with use cases or anything, but I'm curious to kind of just understand from you two about ways in which this trajectory continues to play out.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in from a possibly slightly different angle here, which is to say, the availability of these chips to enable AI and other complex processes to happen on device may encourage, and we might be an example of this, but it may encourage other venture capitalists and otherwise to get involved. And that will encourage new approaches to solving today's problems to be funded and brought forward. So, I mentioned we're funded by Mark Cuban, who likes to invest in AI. And, we've been lucky enough to be able to bring what is a totally new approach of neuroscience-led AI into this field, and look what we've come up with. So hopefully this evolution, this is a big step, right? That chips that can enable AI to run in the ear. This is a huge monumental moment. And, the outcome of what we're achieving here is, Facebook and Google and all the other guys, moonshots and all this sort of stuff. This topic that we're on here, this was unimaginable years ago. There's fleets of people at Facebook Reality Labs and Moonshot Project X, all these guys working on trying to solve these problems, and they've now been enabled. They've now been unlocked. So the Knowles system is now a platform on which other people can get funded, and more and exciting use cases can be unveiled. At the moment, the AI that people are looking for, or the solution people are looking for, is conversation enhancement. But once we're beyond that, what's the next thing and the next thing? So there's more and more features, no doubt, that will come down the road. And hopefully, this development will encourage more innovative thinkers and new entrants to get funding and go and take their ideas forward. So it's difficult to know exactly what that next feature and evolution might be, but there's all these different areas that you've been talking about, particularly Dave and Andy on this and other podcasts about conversational AI and, integrating with the cloud and how to enable different use cases just through wearing this instead of using a smartphone or a computer or other means of communicating. So it's the start of an exciting new wave, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that this whole idea of being able to do that processing on the chip itself, that's the big breakthrough here. And like you said, you have Facebook out there that's saying they're calling this a moonshot. Well, you kind of already landed on the moon here, so I think that's so exciting. And to your point too, you brought one piece of the puzzle, right? And you needed what Knowles had in order to really bring this thing into fruition. And I think that's kind of the other theme here, is that you had mentioned earlier, Andy, Alongo too, right? So these are names that you actually hear throughout the industry, and the licensing of technology is really starting to become a theme. We've talked about that with Jacody as well. And so I think that it's interesting how you're now seeing a lot of these software players come into the fold as licensees of their technology to be baked into something like a Knowles chip. And the possibilities do start to make your head spin a little bit, because we are kind of in this new frontier where a lot of this can be done on chip. So closing thoughts from you, Andy.
Yeah, very well said. It's really an exciting time. You mentioned the licensing. We made this chip open. It's an open DSP, so anybody can write to it. And so think about some of the things that were, landing on Mars, if you will, right? Think about Nikolai over at Bragi and how he's talked about what happens when you can actually start to derive emotional intent. His example is, if I say, I need help versus I need help, right? Deriving the emotional intent from that same expression means a lot. And you have people starting to approach that problem. And you can do it for mood analysis. There are people who are working on playing music according to your mood, this sort of thing. Well, all that starts to be possible with the processing power that we're putting on chip today. So I think it's really an exciting time for all the advanced use cases for hearables. And we're really going to start to see devices which are not only useful, but really enhancing of a person's lifestyle. It's very, very exciting.
Giles, closing thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I can only speak from our own perspective. And I can tell you that every day we've spent working on the Knowles chip, has felt like a lifetime. Dr. Andy on our team was talking about how the other day we were sitting in a room, we've got 2 laptops going, we've got a bunch of breadboards, we got the earbuds in, and we're doing some stuff, and in an hour we've gone, oh wow, that's much better than it was an hour ago. And then Andy was describing how, you know, to do that probably was 5 years of work and, you know, NASA's entire compute power, done that in an hour. Right. Just 3 guys sitting in a room. And that's the kind of incremental steps that we're able to make now at lightning fast speed, and that's going to take us to some really exciting places now. So yeah, I mean, we couldn't be more excited right now. We've got the chips and the reference design for TWS, which means we're literally able to, within minutes, go, right, let's try that. And in the meantime, we're off making the AI better and better and better. And it's just such an exciting moment right now. The speed of iteration and the potential for where we can go is just so exciting. So yeah, this is really a huge moment. And I hope people realize, you know, quite where we are right now. And, you know, we're really grateful for Knowles for believing in us and for giving us the chance and for supporting us. And Andy, you mentioned the system right now is very easy to work with. So, you know, that's a good thing. If there are other people wanting to start developing stuff, it's a really good system to work with. So, you know, we're just so grateful and excited for this moment. And, you know, even we don't know exactly where we go. And, you know, we've got some nice plans, and, you know, let's see if we can start ticking off some milestones.
Well, thanks. I mean, yeah, we find the relationship extremely valuable as well. And I appreciate all that you said, Giles.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Andy.
This is so cool. I'm just like, you know, from a personal standpoint, it's hilarious that, you know, two of the people that I've really gotten to know through all the podcasts and everything, you know, just so happen to be the ones that are like bringing forward, or their respective companies are bringing forward just such a monumental landmark milestone in this industry. And it's so cool to see. So I can't wait to see, you know, to your point, Giles, like, I hope people understand it. I think people are totally going to understand it once they start to see this come and manifest in the market here in the not too distant future, because I continue to say this, like, everywhere as loudly as possible. This next generation of hearing aids and hearables and true wireless devices are going to be amazing. So I'm so excited, and it's just getting started with what's coming. So I think lots and lots to be optimistic about. So that's all for this week. Thank you for everybody who tuned in here, and we will chat with you next time.